and move on down to ceremonial items. Okay, the Alamosa Historic Walking Tour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. And I believe we've got Andrea Bachman in the participants too, and we've got Cliff as well. I come before you tonight in my role as the Historic Preservation Officer, and we've got really a fantastic asset for the community. This historical walking tour was the brainchild of our longtime HPAC member, Don Thompson, and with Cliff Simmons's expertise, we were able to get this project off the ground, and I think it really demonstrates the quality of staff and volunteers we have, and you know, does a little bit to showcase the rich history that we have as a community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cliff to talk a little bit about the presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick.
All right, thank you, Deacon. Yes, so this is the Alamosa Historical Walking Tour. This was born out of the historical registry that we have. All of the information that is on here was provided by HPAC, and then I compiled all the information and put it into this format, and I also gathered some updated photos of some of these areas as well. So this is also embedded within the web page for the HPAC as well. So anyone who wants to learn anything like that, they can simply scroll through here. All of these locations are GPS located, so that if they want to visit them, they know exactly where they are.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Cliff.
No problem.
Andrea, do you want to say a couple words?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks for letting me speak a bit here. As you all know, I'm new to the board, and so I can't take any responsibility for this, but I do really appreciate all the work that Clifton has put in, and Deacon as well as past and present board members. And I think that, you know, with education comes appreciation, and that this is an awesome tool and guide for Alamosa to have to share with both its residents and visitors. So yeah, thank you guys very much.
With that, Mayor, we can turn it back over to see if there's any questions or comments.
Okay, so that great presentation, Cliff, Deacon, and Andrea. I'm really looking forward to it myself. So I'm going to recognize City Council members with your hands raised. The first person is Councilor Hensley.
So are you able to answer any questions about the buildings? Or so I guess when I saw you flip through them, I think it said the First Baptist Church. And it looks like that church needs a lot of work. And I was just kind of curious if we know a little of the history or what's sort of the future for that building.
You know, funny you should mention that. Actually, that came up recently during our last HPAC meeting. There was a survey done of the property, I think in about 2007, and certainly there is some work, especially with the roof, and Andrea might remember the conversation better than I, but looks like maybe some mortar issues with some of the brick as well. Beautiful building. I think my notes here say 1907 and 1908 it was built. Yeah, no, it certainly has some structural things going on with it, unfortunately.
Well, thank you. And I would just add, so I love that you're doing this walking tour and I look forward to it. I will say that last year when we had CML out, all the members for the executive board meeting, and we got to do a tour. And oh my gosh, I learned so much. And I know each time I do that, I'm sure I'll learn more. So it was really a great experience. So I highly recommend for anybody who hasn't done it, or even if you have done something similar to it, to do it again. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley. Up next, we have Councilor Griego.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Deacon, is there any funds available out there if somebody has a building like that they want to maybe help, remodel or match funds or however it's set up?
Yeah, certainly. So through the state, there are, since we are a certified local government, there are funds available. And since this property is on our local registry, it certainly is available. Sometimes coming up with the match is a little bit of a barrier because it is a matching grant. But certainly there is some money out there.
Have we had the opportunity to find out who owns the building and are they aware that there's monies available so they can probably take advantage of that program?
I might punt that one a little bit to Andrea. I know we've reached out to them a little bit, but I think Andrea might remember more of that conversation than I do.
Yeah, I have reached out to them since our last board meeting and I haven't heard back yet, but I'm trying to get that conversation going with them. And I do believe it is a church in there right now. And I apologize, I'm blanking on the name, but I have reached out to them and I'm waiting a response.
And Councilor Griego, if you get questions from property owners, you can always indicate that there are state grants. And if they're not sure how to find them, they can easily call the city and we can help guide them on where they can find the information on those grants type of situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Deacon.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised at this particular time. So seeing that I don't see any hands raised, that means that you all did a really good job in your presentation. Thank you so very much. And we're looking forward to seeing more, okay? All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, so that brings us to the next item on our agenda is consent calendar A. See any hands raised? Councilor Griego?
Motion to approve consent calendar A.
Thank you.
I will second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Behill?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
And Councilor Griego.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. That brings us to the next item on the agenda. Business brought forward by city staff, Public Works, a waiver of telecommunications application fees.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually kind of a neat story of community partnership, and I'm excited that the city can play a role. Jim Belknap was contacted by Cielo, and they had shared with him that Cielo and Jade had a meeting with the Alamosa School District in order to strategize on some key areas in the community where there wasn't fiber or access to the internet, which was extremely challenging during these times of COVID, either because students may need to do online learning, they might have the hybrid schedule, or they might need to quarantine. And so Jade and Cielo took a look at the community and kind of divvied up which company thought they could address those different areas. Cielo, while talking with Jim, realized one of the key areas is Century Mobile Home Park, which is across the street from the cemetery. And Jim shared with them that we actually have city fiber down to the cemetery building. And so through that conversation, they came up with an idea to place a temporary pole behind the cemetery and use some of the city's fiber that we're not using, a few strands that we're not using, and to allow the use of that pole for the internet for that location. And so from a staff perspective, we were able to review the location. Everyone's been involved in those discussions. Eric has been able to draft up a temporary revocable license. So we can do all of that type of work, but the one thing we cannot do, and is probably most appropriately up to council, is to waive that license fee. And so it's a $500 fee associated with this, so it's not insignificant. When we took a look at our fee schedule, if you might think back many months ago, a lot of how we did our fees was to try to cover staff time. And when it comes to telecommunications, staff has a shot clock on how quickly they have to review those, get it done. They have to move other projects aside. Well, since this is a temporary one, we don't have as much staff time involved. And given that it's a partnership from a community perspective to try to solve kind of a social equity issue, we want to recommend to council that we waive that $500 fee. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks, for explaining that. I will acknowledge the counselors who have their hands raised in the participant panel box there. And I see Counselor Daniel, followed by Counselor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I got so excited when I read this, and just a little sad that it has been going on probably so long for these families. And so I'm really glad that we are where we are to get it taken care of, and just really appreciate the kind of brainstorming that has happened to make it happen. So thank you for that. And I'm in 100% support of this, but I just really want to say thank you for bringing it to our attention and working with all of the partners to get it to happen.
Thank you, Counselor Daniel. Up next, we have Counselor Griego, followed by Counselor Vigil.
I agree with Counselor Daniels. This area here there's nothing but a bunch of families in those trailers, and a lot of families that are quite disadvantaged to say, so to have something where they can still continue their education and their learning is so important. For the city to play a role in it, is quite important also. So I too am 100% in favor of doing something like this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Griego. We have Counselor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to commend the city and Jade and Cielo for working on this. Being a teacher during the time of COVID, as I'm sure Ms. Hensley knows too, you have a lot of students who can't, to no fault of their own, get work done when they're away or on a quarantine, or we're going remote or hybrid. And this is another example of the city stepping up and helping people when they need it. The city is stepping up again to help people during COVID. So I just appreciate this group for getting things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Vigil.
Thank you, Counselor Vigil. I too appreciate the efforts of all the participants involved in this, and the city staff and the community stakeholders. Thank you. Okay, Counselor Daniel.
Mayor, if there's no further discussion, I move that we waive the telecommunication application fee for the temporary wireless facility.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Vigil,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Carson.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. Thank you, Council. Up next on the agenda, under City Manager Legal, the first reading of ordinance number 1-2021, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement with Alamosa County. Is that going to be you, Ms. Brooks?
Yep, it will be me. Thank you, Mayor. So as council knows, you approved the umbrella agreement that we have between the city of Alamosa and the Denver Dumb Friends League. And as we discussed that contract, it anticipated that for then the other municipalities or counties in the valley that we would have subcontracts. And so what this means is for each of these entities, the city will receive the master bill from Denver Dumb Friends League, and then we will charge each of the responsive entities respectively. And so this is our first subcontract with Alamosa County. As you know, from a background perspective, it's because of Alamosa County that we even have the connection with the Denver Dumb Friends League. And so this was pretty much anticipated, and all the costs are the same. It's essentially a pass-through.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks. We have Councilor Carson has his hand up. You're on mute, Councilor Carson.
Being that we're aware of this, and I was barring that there's no other questions, I was going to make a motion that we approve the ordinance adopting the intergovernmental agreement between Alamosa County with Alamosa County for subcontracted use of the animal shelter.
You want to do that on first reading?
And set the public.
And set for public hearing on January 20th to 21st, January 20th, 21 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I think it's a good agreement. I mean, this is something we've looked again forward to. And I think it'll help out a lot for the animals, and, you know, we're upgrading, and that's what I appreciate.
Thank you, Councilor Rawls. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yep. Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Vigil,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. All right, up next on the agenda, we have under item B, it says motion authorizing the city manager to submit a petition for inclusion of the 50 acres of the city ranch property.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Give me 1 second because I am going to share my screen. This one I do have a little bit of a visual for. So Council might remember in 2018, we undertook a public outreach effort to create a ranch master plan. There was a lot of public outreach, public meetings, a survey, the drafts were placed on the website. And then the plan was adopted with some changes, both from the Community Recreation Board and City Council. And so it was a pretty good public process. Essentially, if I could boil that whole recommendation down, was that for the ranch property, those areas along the river where you have a lot of the natural habitat, wildlife, those areas, we are focused on trying to preserve that, maybe look at a conservation easement if the price is correct, some of those types of things. In the middle part of the ranch, it was identified that we should continue maybe the ranching operations, but make sure we're doing a better job of overseeing those leases. Or if we had some low level recreation type of needs, that would go in those areas as well. And so, you know, if there's a BMX bike or an extension of the Frisbee golf course or those types of things, that would be low level recreational uses. And then the third category is out of all 1,300 acres of the ranch property, only 75 acres was identified as if there is ever going to be development, not that it was going to happen, but if it was going to happen, this would be the only area that the plan identified as appropriate. And that was because of its access to 6 South and Highway 17 and relationship to some other businesses. And so that was the outreach that we did for the creation of the plan. Since that time, council has been approached by a potential developer who may want to put an RV park there. So those are some discussions for the future. But what it did prompt for us is to look at where the utilities are. And so regardless if this development that's pending before council or if a future development in 5 years or 10 years comes up, we wanted to look at what is the easiest way to get water and wastewater to the property. And what you can see from this attached map is This is where East Alamosa District's water and wastewater ends. And then this is where the city's ends. And so from the developer having a conversation with East Alamosa, their preference is before they talk about what they're willing to do and not do, they want to make sure it's a public process. And they also would like for there to be a petition for inclusion. And so what that means is this 50 acres, if council approves this, we would petition to include this in the East Alamosa district. It would still be in the city limits. It would still be owned by the city. But from a property tax perspective, it would be included in the East Alamosa district. And the reason that's important to them is they rely on some property taxes for the maintenance of their system and construction and those types of things. And so it does make sense for this to happen. The city does not pay property taxes since we're a governmental entity. So there's very little impact to the city on this action. But by petitioning to have this included in their district, it does open the door for either this developer or any other developer that the city might entertain in the future to have a discussion with the district. And with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you so very much, Ms. Brooks. Okay, so I will take council comments in the order in which I see your hands raised. I'll go ahead and give you the order that I see right now. I see Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Hensley, then Councilor Broyles. Councilor Daniel, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Heather, thank you for the explanation. I just have a question. So the petition for inclusion, if no development happens, it wouldn't do anything different. So East Alamosa wouldn't be responsible for anything. We wouldn't be responsible for anything. This is just for in case something happens in the future.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Daniel. Up next,
And it's not just for in case something happens in the future. The East Alamosa wants a petition for inclusion filed before they come up with numbers for what it's going to cost to serve that property. So it's really kind of to foster the any development that might take place. That we kind of need to do that to be able to figure out what the ground rules are.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
thank you, Mr. Sweezo. Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Up next, we have Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Broyles, then Councilor Griego.
So my question is that if I heard this correctly, this is dealing with property tax, which we don't pay already. So if somebody bought this property, then they would pay it because they wouldn't be a government entity. But this, if there was any sales tax or anything like that, we would still get that.
That is correct. And
Okay.
it is probably appropriate if they are being serviced by East Alamosa that their property taxes are going to East Alamosa District.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley. Up next, we have Councilor Broyles, followed by Councilor Griego.
Yeah, my question was along the cost. So, you know, I think it's going to be more expensive to take water and sewer from Alamosa rather than from East Alamosa, right? Would you concur?
Correct. And I can put that map back up, but you know, we'd have to go underneath the water or we'd have to go up 17. I mean, we haven't fully designed what that would look like, but there is a significant difference in distance between where the city utilities end and where East Alamosa ends.
Yeah, it only makes sense because that other acreage would be serviced by the same line, that other 25 acres you have there. So I think it only makes sense. And again, when you have it, I'd like to see what it would cost or what they're asking the city to pay when you get to that point.
Well, so the city would not be paying for anything, I mean, other than staff time. But we would just be filing a petition to include this property in the district, and we'd have to testify before their board and those types of things. If the property develops and council approves something like that, then the developer would be paying whatever needs to be paid to East Alamosa District for the extension of those utilities.
Okay, so developer responsibility.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'd still like to know what the estimated cost would be. Because that's going to be part of the negotiation, I'm sure.
Yes, and that's part of what the attorney Eric Shrisho was talking about in that Alamosa doesn't even want to start those discussions with any potential developer until they have a petition for inclusion. So it's a chicken or egg thing. So we had a developer who needed to get in a proposal to us at the same time doesn't have firm numbers to know what the extension of the utilities might cost.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Okay, up next, we have Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the ranch plan looks at that 75 acres for development, wouldn't it be better just to include the whole 75 acres and do the inclusion for the whole 75 acres? So that we don't have to go in the future. And like you say, Heather, if somebody else wants to develop that other 25, they already have the opportunity to go ahead and look at the numbers to see if they can proceed.
So we had thought about that, and Eric, if you can help me remember, we kind of went back and forth on should we do the whole 75 or should we do just the 50? I think since there's only interest at this point in time from a development perspective of the 50, we thought let's see how this process goes, and then we can always do the other in the future if needed. Was there something further to that? Because I know we went back and forth on that. Eric?
No, that was pretty much it. It's not a complicated process to do the petition for inclusion. It's just the filling out the application essentially, and the district then considers it at a meeting. There's really nothing more to it than that. So we wouldn't be seeing ourselves much. I don't know if Heather, you wanted to get into the serendipitous fact that there may be something else proposed for that remainder acreage that would not benefit from inclusion.
So the request for proposals, I want to try to keep this as high level as possible and
I served it up that way.
Without getting into too many details. So the request for proposals closed on Monday. We did receive two. One proposal was from Mr. Patel pertaining to this 50 acres. And there's a lot of details in his proposal that I'll be sending to council. But then we had an unanticipated proposal for approximately 23 acres south of that 50 from Mr. Salzar, who I think is interested in having a little bit more of a buffer. And so there was I don't think there's an intention to develop, and if this would impact his desire to have it in East Alamosa District or not. At this point in time, I can talk to him about that because it could be that he just wants it for a buffer and would not want it in the East Alamosa. And it could be that council's not interested in that proposal either. So there's a lot of what ifs and pieces up in the air.
I guess what I was looking at is what we're going through right today, where the people are trying to develop, and then we're having to stop and do this inclusion so they can get the numbers put together. And since the ranch plan already looks at the whole 75 acres as a development type of piece of property, it would only be logical to bring the whole party in there, and whoever wants to come and develop it, or even if it's Mr. Salazar, it's already in there. And we don't have to go through the whole motion again, even though Eric says it's not a big deal, but it's just something that, if I want to go over there and develop and I start putting two numbers together, I can go over the east side right away and say, hey, this property, and they can shoot me some numbers right away. And that would tell me, yes, go ahead and go with it, or forget it. It's cost too much money and move on to somewhere else.
Yes, but if Salazar were to, or if council were to be interested in Salazar's proposal, and indeed he did not want to develop it, all of a sudden he's paying property taxes on that parcel for no purpose at all, because he's never going to take advantage of the fact that it is within the East Alamosa Water and Sanitation District. So he would be paying extra property taxes on that.
Mr. Suizo, as a private individual, if he buys that property, he will pay property tax.
But he'll be paying
extra
more
property taxes.
He'll paying more, yeah, he'll be paying more to be in the East Alamosa.
I just, that's, the point I was just trying to make that it seem more logical to bring them both in, but it seems like we're gonna already make a deal with Mr. Salazar, then, you know. Thank you, Mayor.
So there's no presumption that that's going to happen. And the attorney and I went back and forth on this too. So this is a very natural question of why just do 50 instead of 75, because we really did banter that around. So I think the discussion's very, very good. It wasn't like that we feel strongly it needs to be this way. It was, well, this probably tips it a little ways. And so that's why staff's recommendation is the 50s. Even if you were to say you do not want to accept the proposal from Mr. Salazar, this would still be staff's recommendation.
And also what I look at in the future, like if this does happen, is the economic development part of that area, that eventually that by letting it go to some kind of retail type of a business, that would help us pay back what we eventually paid for that ranch, you know, altogether with. So those are the points I was looking at. So that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Okay, that brings us to Councilor Carson.
I just wanted to kind of ask a question for clarification so that everybody, and this is just the way I see it. So currently the 50-acre proposal with East Alamosa is just strictly so that Mr. Patel can get his pricing done for the land purchase. The 23 acres, as long as we leave that alone, those property taxes still continue to go to the city of Alamosa instead of East Alamosa Water District because of the lack of development. Correct?
No. The city would continue to receive property. I don't know that property is within the city anyway, but that probably is because the ranch is. So the city would continue to receive property taxes for any property, and the East Alamosa taxes would be layered on top of that. So
it would just be additional taxes for whoever, whether it's Salazar or, you know, John Doe, whoever buys this. If we petition it in right now, we just add an extra cost.
Correct.
Just for clarification, in the future, they could then, or the city could then petition that in separately without any different cost or incurring of cost at all, right?
Correct.
I mean,
it would be the same process we're doing now. But we at least would have known factors. So we would know potentially what the project is or those types of things.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I just wanted to state that. I know it wasn't a question. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much. Is there any way? Okay, thank you. Councilor Hensley.
Sorry, I do have one more question. So obviously water being such a commodity that's valuable and sometimes has challenges, does the East Water District have any concerns or anything in regards to what could be there, and would they be able to supply the amount of water needed?
So those are discussions they need to have with any potential developer. And so, but they're not willing to have those discussions until there's a petition for inclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilor Griego.
Well, if there's no further questions, I'd like to make the motion that we authorize the city manager to submit a petition for inclusion for the 50 acres of the city ranch.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Councilor Carson, did you have any discussions? I saw your hand up. You're on mute, Councilor Carson.
I had just raised my hand to second, but it's fine.
You're good, okay. Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. No further discussion. Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Carson?
Yes.
Counselor Vijo?
Yes.
Counselor Broyles?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Griego.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, under item 3A, Human Resources and Risk Management, public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 28-2020, an ordinance amending the established pay plan for the city officers and employees.
Thank you, Mayor. This is second reading, so I won't spend too much time. As council approved the budget for 2021, which we're now in, there was a 1% pay increase. And so the entire pay plan with the approval of that budget was also adjusted by 1%. Following that action, staff was made aware that the state minimum wage was increasing by 2.7%. So that 1% change was not going to have us be compliant for that, our lowest level for the state minimum wage. And so this second reading, what it applies is a 0.5% to all the pay grades. And then the 1.2 remaining difference to just our lowest grade, grade 1, so we can be compliant with the state minimum wage.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Ms. Brooks. So at this time, I would like to open it up for a public hearing. And Ms. Martinez, is there any way you can let the attendees, give them instructions on how to participate by raising their hand, either on their cell phone or either on their computer device?
Yes, sir. If you are on the Zoom app, there is a raise your hand feature button in the bottom of your screen. Click on that, it'll raise your hand. And then if you're on the telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand.
So at this time, I open up public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 28-2020. I don't see any hands raised, Ms. Martinez.
I don't either, Mayor.
Okay, so at this time, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Councilor Griego.
If there's no other questions, I'll make the motion that we approve ordinance number 28-2020.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Vigil,
Yes.
Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, up next on the agenda, we have committee reports. Any council members who have any committee reports, please raise your hand and I will recognize you. Okay, I don't see any committee reports, any hands raised for committee reports. So we'll go ahead and move on down the agenda to staff announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few quick ones. The first is we do have a few work sessions. And so January with your Wednesdays is booked up. Your dance card is full. So we do have next week on the 13th is a work session to discuss the 2 proposals for the ranch request for proposals that we held. And then at the last Wednesday in January will be to meet with the Planning Commission as well as our consultant for the housing assessment. And on that housing assessment, just as a reminder, it's kind of, the project is twofold. So the first part is the collection of the data. What are our demographics? What's our growth rate? What is the housing stock? What's the condition of that stock? What's the price points? What is all of that data? So we have They brought together a draft of that first part of it. And I can tell you, after having to read it, I am so very grateful that we are doing this project. These numbers are important, and knowing where we should focus and where the market's taking care of the housing situation is so very important. And it will help for our grants. It will help for our public and private partners. So I'm really looking forward to being able to get that in front of you. We're taking a week to clean it up. The housing committee met and provided comments. There's some more information they're going to add to it. So we're getting it cleaned up, but you'll get it at least a week to a week and a half in advance of that work session. So you can read it, and we'll have the planning commission there as well. And you guys can ask questions and those types of things. The second part of the project then is to take that information and say, what do we want the strategies to be? What are our goals as a community? What are the strategies? Which organization needs to do what? Those types of things. So it's not just now we know we have an issue, it's how are we going to work towards fixing it, which I'm really excited to have that come afterwards. So we know the plan's just not going to sit on a bookshelf. So I'm glad that process is moving forward, and thanks to Deacon for leading it and making sure that we stay on track with that. And that's all we have from a staff update.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. I see Council Griego has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a question on one of those work sessions where you talk about the proposals. Are those two proposals for that 50 acres, or are they separate?
They're separate, which is what's kind of unique. It was unanticipated. So we only have one proposal for that 50. And then we have a second proposal from Mr. Arnold Salazar for approximately 23 acres south of that 50.
Okay, when we discussed this, we discussed and we put it on the paper that we were taking bids for the 50 acres, correct? Or how was that put together in the paper?
I do think it was, we indicated it's 50 acres, that we were approached for the 50 acres out of the 75, and that people should submit something. So someone could have submitted something smaller, or someone potentially could have submitted something larger. But if council feels uncomfortable with that and would want us to re-advertise, that's obviously a direction you guys could discuss and give to staff.
And the way I look at it is, people that, the way the advertisement was set up, they were looking at the 50 acres. You know, there was not something mentioned that, yeah, you can also look at the other 23 acres if you want to bid on that too. So I think by shutting that down, that period of time, now you can't even propose it. You still can't submit a proposal for them, right? If I'm right?
Well, it's closed, but
Closed.
at any time, anyone can bring a proposal for any city property to us, as they've done in the past.
Correct, but I think that if we were just discussing the 50 acres, I think we should look at that. And if you're gonna open up the other 23 acres, then it should be set out there. So anybody could bid on it. Because the way you have it set up right now is you're giving that one person the opportunity to kind of like shoot in, and it's closed now, and I can submit my proposal only, and Charlie Grego won't be able to submit a proposal against me because it's already shut down. So I don't think it's right, but it's up to council.
Well, I think that's a discussion you can have at your work session, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, all righty. So thank you, Mrs. Brooks, for that update. And I too would like to commend you and Deacon for your hard work on that, just going through the initial details of that housing report. Thank you so much. Okay, that brings us up to the next item on the agenda. And that is liquor licensing actions.
So that is a consideration for you guys of the transfer of ownership application for the Reeds at Cattails, for Robert Rudder doing business at the Reeds at Cattails. And I just want to make sure that he's on the meeting. So Robert, if you're on, can you raise your hand So I could bring you in. I only see 4 people on the attendee list. And I'm not sure any of those are him. I don't know if he's on. He did have notice. He had it posted. We posted it on his at the license location. Guess I'll give you the background. So we need you guys to conduct a hearing to determine whether or not to consider the background record results if they indicate a concern with the good moral character of the applicant pursuant to the statute. This is a quasi judicial issue, so your action can only be presented or can only be based on evidence presented at the hearing. So Robert Rudder is the applicant for the transfer of ownership for the hotel and restaurant license at Cattails that is currently held by the city. Accepted the application administratively on November 9th. Generally, these are all handled administratively unless something turns up on their background. So the CBI background results got returned, and there were some items on there that you might want to consider in determining whether he is of good moral character. All the other portions on the application were complete and in good standing, and we did post notice of this hearing on the premise as required on December 27th. So this one only needs a 10-day notice requirement. I'm getting some texts.
Okay, so I apologize. My computer just decided to reboot in the your conversation there. So do we need to make a motion at this particular time, Ms. Martinez? I see, hold on one second. I have
I just finished giving the background information. I did attach what was found in the background information to your council communication. I don't know if you want me to review it with you or not, but it was there, so hopefully you guys read it. And then from there, I'm not sure if Eric does the hearing portion or we just, Robert.
I had mentioned that at our staff meeting, but I was misremembering the process. It's not really a public hearing, it's council discussion about whether the items disclosed in the background check provide a concern for council with respect to the character of the applicant. And in particular, I think the relevant items would be the 3 DUI charges, 2 convictions that we know of. We're not sure of the disposition of the most recent 2006 charge. And this isn't raised for the purpose of telling you that staff thinks it's an issue. It's only raised because we didn't want you to be unaware of that. And, you know, I would not, you can look at the regulations about what constitutes good moral character, and DUIs that are 14 years old don't necessarily indicate that there's a problem with that, but that it could. And so we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that in making this consideration. And it may well be that you don't think there's an issue, which is fine. It may be that you do, in which case it would be much better if Mr. Rudder were here to discuss them with you. So you certainly could move to continue this hearing to the next meeting if you have concerns about that and want to address them with him. Or if you don't have concerns, I don't know that you would need to move to continue the hearing. So up to you guys.
okay, thank you.
Can I make a comment real quick to council? I know we have hands raised, but
Can I have mine?
If we could, let's just stick to the order of the hands, Councilor Carson, and then that way we'll go in that order because there are like several hands and ahead of yours right now. We have Councilor Groves, followed by Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Grego, and then Councilor Carson, okay? We'll just stick to that order, okay? Go ahead, Councilor Brawls.
Well, it concerns me that he's not here for us to be able to ask him questions or him to fill us in on the details. So, and I would like to quiz him about those items too, and it may be some other items. So I'm not comfortable moving forward with him being absent and not being able to talk to him about some of these issues.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Up next, we have Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel.
So I have a question. I agree. I think it's appropriate that if he's here to ask questions, and so if he doesn't show up, then to put it off to the next meeting. But I also do, because this is a transfer, do we not need to do the petitions and things like that? Is it a little different? If you don't mind reminding me.
It is. It's very different. The transfers are just transferring to a new owner. And so they don't have to do the petitions, but we do have to still run a background check.
Perfect. Thank you for sort of clarifying that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Hensley. Up next, we have Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Griego. Ms. Brooks, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let you know Holly was able to send the phone number for the gentleman. He indicated he knew that the hearing was tonight, but he didn't understand that he was supposed to be here. So I shared with him at this point, he's working at the restaurant right now. And so it's not something he can quickly jump on. So I mentioned that you guys were discussing possibly postponing it to the next time. And then Ms. Martinez can follow up with him tomorrow on what he needs to do. He has the Zoom link. He acknowledged he had all of that information. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Okay. Councilor Daniel, I believe you were making a comment for.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
welcome.
So as I was looking at this, I do have questions and I do want him to be here and I agree with all of that. My question was, has he ever been applied for another license? That was the only thing I wasn't sure when I was reading kind of the rules. Do we have any indication that he's ever been denied a license in either in our community or any other community for a liquor license?
I think I was gonna try to find my folder that says it, but I think this is the first time he's applied for a license under his name. He did work at Trinchera, but I don't know if that license is under his name. He was
Okay.
like the sheriff there.
Okay, I would be interested in knowing, just verifying that for the next time when we have this discussion, please.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Daniel. We have Councilor Griego, then I believe Councilor Carson, and then Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't really closely look at this application, but is there a clause or something that says that if this person decides to leave the golf course, that license reverts back to the city? Or how does that work, Eric?
Yes, that's a clause in his lease.
Okay. So if he decides, if for some reason it doesn't work out there, that license comes back to the city, correct?
Well, we'd have to
The
do a
liquor
transfer, but he has to participate in that transfer.
But there's nothing for sure that says that the city can get that license back, right?
Well, you as the liquor licensing authority are in charge of whether you would approve the transfer back. So there's really, I mean, it would be highly unlikely if the lease says he has to cooperate in transferring it back to the city, and you as the city are in charge of whether or not you approve yourselves as the licensee, is going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes.
So I just looked at the license or the application, and he did indicate on it that he's never been denied an application before.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor Hensley. Councilor Carson? No? Okay, you're okay. Good. Councilor Hensley?
So I guess I just have a question, and I don't know if we can have it clarified by the next meeting. Since that last situation was like in 2006, I'm a little confused why we don't know the outcome. And I guess, is there a way to find that out?
I think it would have to come from him. All that came back on the background results was a charge saying he was charged with it, and there was nothing I could find on conviction for it.
That's why we need him here.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so it looks like we're gonna just put this hearing off until our next council meeting and further discussion at that time. Is that pretty much the consensus? Okay,
Yes. Do we need a motion for that?
okay, Ms. Brooks.
Yes.
Yes.
So the only other option is, because I think, this could make a difference to them financially when they get their liquor license, is since we do have work sessions set up for next week, we could see about posting it also as a special meeting, and you could do this item, just this one item next week as well, if council's open to that.
Okay, council, how do you feel?
I agree. I'll make the motion that we defer this
Okay.
other meeting as the city sees fit.
Okay, Council Daniel?
I realized that he was confused, but I don't feel comfortable pushing up the agenda. It's 1 week, and I get that it could make a difference, but I also feel like he has a responsibility as a business owner coming in, and I'm not comfortable moving it up for that. That's just my opinion, council.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Carson?
Just for clarification, my comment was going to be, I move we table this matter till the next meeting earlier, but Councilor Daniels is right. I mean, the thing is this is his business license on the line. And if you can't fit it in your schedule to answer for DUIs that you had, I mean, I'm not freaking out about the DUIs. They were 14 years ago, but we don't have answers to those questions without him here. And it's extremely important that he's here, especially if he wants to be selling liquor in our community. And so, no, we shouldn't make it a special item on a work session. He can show up at the next meeting the way he was supposed to tonight. I'm sorry, it's just kind of irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Grego?
Well, being a passive business person, I disagree with both you guys. If he's willing to come to us and explain the questions you have on his DUIs, and
what do you mean?
We're already
That's all we said.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Carson, I got the floor. If he wants to come and we are already going to meet anyway, what's the purpose? Economic development, here we are doing all this stuff for economic development downtown and anything we can. And then we go back and we're pushing on this guy, that the golf course right now as it is such in a hole that person needs any kind of help you can give him to get out of the hole. And to go over there and I could see if we're going to have a special meeting on Wednesday, then I could understand, yeah, well, maybe he should be the next council meeting. But we're already assembling, okay? We're just going to add an item and we're going to do it for the purpose of publicizing it. Come on, guys,
What do you mean by, what do you mean you disagree? We have other issues to discuss at that work session, and discussing DUIs is going to take probably a while. He needs to clarify some stuff. And again, I'm not saying he doesn't need the license. And again, I have no issue with the DUIs, but it's a pretty important thing to show up at a liquor licensing hearing. And if you're going to go through an application, you should be able to read it from the top to the bottom. I'm sorry, I think it is irresponsible not to show up at a liquor licensing hearing. And I really don't want to make a special exception. We bend over backwards for a lot of people. You should know what you have to do on these lists. I'm sorry. I don't agree.
Well, I disagree. Thank you, Mayor.
We're going to have to agree to disagree.
Thank you. Thank you for that discussion, both of you. Councilor Hensley?
I also support the fact that since we're already meeting next week, I'm okay with having it on next week's agenda as well. I'm not too hurt one way or the other if it's the following weekend, and since it can make a difference economically. I definitely know when you open a restaurant, having been in the restaurant business myself, that first feel a customer gets when they walk in that door makes a huge difference. And so if somebody comes in, let's say we did decide to let them serve alcohol, And because we waited that extra week and they had customers come in, and then in that time, they're like, we probably won't go back there again because they don't have wine or whatever. So I just want them to start off on the best foot. Obviously, he made a mistake. We don't know all the details to why this happened. Again, we could ask that because that could add to the character, et cetera, when we ask the questions. But I'm totally supportive of it being next week if he's able to come next week.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hensley. I believe Ms. Martinez wanted to say something.
I just wanted to ask Eric and make sure that the 10-day posting requirement didn't matter if we just are postponing the hearing. Because the hearing originally has a 10-day posting requirement.
Right, no, it's fine. But we can continue it as long as we held the hearing today. It can be continued.
Okay. I see Councilor Griego's hands up.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we add to our work session this liquor license so it can be published. And we hear the applicant this next Wednesday.
Wasn't that already David's motion?
I thought I already made that motion.
Oh, did you make it for the thing, for the Wednesday?
I said,
I stand back then. Thank you, Dave. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
We
thought
had
it
a lot of conversation going on. It's okay, Councilor Griego. It's all
Thank
good.
you.
So let's make sure we're clear on this motion. The motion I believe Councilor Brawls made is that we postpone and bring this hearing back up to next Wednesday's work session, and we allow time for this hearing to take place at that time, in which we are okay in regards to the 10-day notice according to our attorney. Is that right? Okay, so we have a motion. We had a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, don't see any. Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Sir, Councilor Broyles,
yes.
Councilor Vigil,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Councilor Carson,
Yes.
Councilor Hensley,
Yes.
Councilor Daniel,
No.
and Councilor Griego.
Yes.
The motion carried 6-1 with Councilor Daniel casting the no vote.
Okay, thank you all so very much. Okay, up next, the last item on the agenda is council comments. I'll recognize the councilors who have their hand raised in the panelist section. Anyone has any comments? Councilor Brawls?
Yeah, I'd just like to know from the city, I guess we're now at a orange level as far as COVID goes. And that's not my question. My question is on the second half of our small business loans, how many applicants have, or how much of that money have we used?
So there's a few different programs. So I want to talk about all three of them, just to make sure there's no confusion. So for the city's loans that we're looking at forgiving, we are at $213,000. And we are waiting to hear back from DOLA on, we submitted our costs to DOLA on some other items. And if they accept all of them, then we may only be able to forgive 90 or 95%. But if they kick some of those costs out, then we can forgive 100%. So we're hoping this week to hear from DOLA to know if we can forgive that full 213,000. The other two items that we're working on is we did get our application submitted for the small business support program. And that deadline is this Friday, the 8th. And it's not a competitive process. It's you either qualify or you don't. And that's where then we would pass through money of up to about 3,500 or 5,000, depending on the size of the sales for the business. We would pass that straight to businesses, and that's a quick turnaround. That has to be expended by the end of February. And then the third thing that we're doing from a business perspective is Kathy and Aaron Keck are taking the lead of pulling the application together for the 5-star business program. And so we're partnering with the county, but obviously right now public health is their hands are beyond full. And so Aaron and Kathy are taking the lead of doing some of that work. And then we'll get an application submitted for the 5-star program.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much for that. Okay, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I am very excited about the 5-star program when I read that. So do let Erin know that we are excited when we see those emails from her. I just wanted to say I think today was a horrible day at our nation's capital, and I think as government officials and leaders, we need to make sure that we're aware of those things, but also just really thank our community for the discourse that we've been able to have throughout this year, as well as what we have on council. We saw tonight that there are disagreements among us. I feel like we were respectful. I feel like, yeah, we disagree. And I just want to say I appreciate that. And I appreciate leading at a local level and being honored with that task and with that responsibility. And my heart goes out to the people who are managing things in Washington, D.C., our law enforcement officers who are there, and the people who were part of that riot, and the people who got hurt, and the woman who lost her life. And so I really appreciate the abilities that we have as United States residents and citizens to have the conversations and the discourse we have. And I'm just highly, highly concerned that that level of civil discord is not happening in a way that it should. And I think we as leaders need to stand up for what is right and how to have conversations. And I just encourage all of our community members and all of our citizens to have the discussions we need to have the disagreements we need to have, but leave the violence and the hate at home. And really figure out how you can have these discussions from your heart and speak truth to power. That needs to happen, but do it in a way that works, in a way that can be heard and that doesn't hurt others. And so just my heart goes out, and I just want to say I appreciate us as a team, and I appreciate our community in Alamosa, and really am honored by this responsibility, and just thank us for having the discussions we have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Daniel. Appreciate that. Councilor Carson.
I really want to just primarily reiterate what Councilor Daniel said. That's the point I was going to speak to. We saw some pretty poor examples today of governance caused by, just division and stress, and we have to thank God that we're in the place we're at, and that we get to, that we're blessed to live in this beautiful, town and this beautiful valley. And I want to thank council for always being good examples of governance. And again, like tonight, we disagreed on something, and we come through it and we work through it. We work hard to get through some of these issues we have for the betterment of our community. And I just want to thank our community and you guys and staff for helping to lead that effort here and in the valley. We have to be examples of better people, because we are very different. We all have different points of view, and we seem to work through them pretty good. And all we can do is really pray for the people that are dealing with that up there, like Councilor Daniel said, and just hope that this year brings some peace to a lot of that, because we've all gone through a ton of stress this year at all levels. So thank you guys for working through some of this stuff, and just pray for everybody up there. It's all we can do. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I like what Ms. Daniel said about us as being civil leaders, elected officials. It's our duty to say something about what happened today. And I remember 4 years ago, after Charlottesville, this council came together and created a document, some sort of declaration that the city of Alamosa is not going to stand for hate like that. And I don't know if we need to do that tonight, but it's really hard to be a teacher and you're teaching this stuff and it goes to hell. This whole process just goes to hell. And they say, what's going on? And I have no idea. I did not have answers today as a teacher for young children, for kids. But it's a sad day for our country. It's a sad day for our country. It's an embarrassment for our country. And as a local official, I am glad that we all have respect for each other and we can talk about things. And we have to keep being that example for folks, especially in this time of stress, as Mr. Carson said. And I would like to add to that, we need to speak truth. We need to speak truth and deal with facts. And that's what I'm about to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Vigil. And thank you to all of the councilors who made comments tonight. I really appreciate it. I don't see any other hands raised. So I'll just go ahead and close and wrap things up here. I know we all received an email earlier today about the loss of Kirk Thompson, who worked for Argo Engineering, and he did a lot of work with helping us out with the water augmentation project. And I just would like to send condolences to his family because he really did a wonderful job helping us out on that project. And my sympathy, and I'm quite sure all of your sympathy, goes out to his family. The other thing I would like to do is applaud our, speaking of leaders, we have leaders in the city with our police chief and our fire chief who both stood up and volunteered to take the vaccines that's going to help prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus in our community. And in doing so, I understand that other city staff members have stepped up to the plate and they are being vaccinated as well. So I would like to commend them for their courage and their leadership in setting the tone and the tempo for the rest of the people in our city who are able to participate in the vaccination process. All righty, so with that being said, everybody, I don't see any other hands raised. So at this time, it is 8:15, and I am going to officially adjourn this meeting. Thank you all so much. Look forward to seeing you next week. Stay safe and take care.
Good night.
Counselors and staff, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.